Chapter 1. Shards. The underbelly of the world was cold and rough. I learned this by pressing my palm against the kitchen floor tile. I lay there, unable to move, staring at a single point on the ceiling where a cobweb swayed in the draft. A deafening roar filled my ears, drowning out the ticking clock and even my own breathing. Laura's words still hung in the air like carbon monoxide, invisible and deadly. Each one was a tiny shard of glass she had methodically driven into my chest, then twisted, looking me straight in the eyes without tears, without hysterics, calmly. That calm was the most terrifying thing. I met someone else, Jack. It's been going on for 6 months. I'm leaving. I don't love you anymore. They lined up in a clear, merciless line, like a firing squad, and they shot, and I was left lying here, on the cold floor of my own kitchen, in the house we built together, in which we raised our daughter, in which I thought we would grow old. Laura, my Laura. With her laugh that sounded like the purest bell, with her habit of biting her lower lip when she was concentrated, with her warmth in bed on cold Chicago nights, it had all been a lie. 6 months, 180 days she had lied to me every morning, kissing me goodbye every evening, asking about my day. She brewed my coffee and planned our vacations and then probably texted him, hiding her phone with a sly smile I mistook for love for me. I got up off the floor, holding onto the countertop. A ringing silence filled the house she had already packed. Her suitcase, bought for our trip to Italy, which now carried her to him, had squeaked its wheels across the hallway parquet just an hour ago. Just an hour, and the world had already turned upside down. I walked through the house like a ghost. There was the couch where we watched movies on Saturdays. There was her favorite mug with kittens. She'd forgotten it, on purpose, as a taunt, or just erased it from her mind, like everything else associated with me. The bedroom was a mess. Closet doors open, clothes she hadn't taken lying on the bed. I caught myself looking for traces of his presence. Some foreign smell, a forgotten cufflink. But there was nothing, only the scent of her perfume, the one I gave her last Christmas. The glass door to the patio reflected my distorted face. I looked old, aged in 1 hour. My eyes were sunken, something wild and unfamiliar swimming in them. I pushed the door open and stepped out into the cool evening air. Neighbors were turning on lights, someone was laughing on the street. Life went on as usual, and that was the most monstrous betrayal. How could the world keep spinning when mine had just turned to dust? Our dog, Buddy the Labrador, came up to me and nudged my palm with his wet nose. He looked at me with devoted, uncomprehending eyes. He sensed something was wrong. His tail wagged uncertainly. "Just us left, Buddy." My voice sounded hoarse and strange. "Just us." I sat down on the porch steps and dug my fingers into his thick fur. The first wave of realization washed over me, cold and sticky like oil. An affair, not just a fight, not cooling feelings, not a mutual decision. An affair, humiliating, vile, cowardly. She had given to another man what belonged to me by right of love and trust. She shared her thoughts, her worries, her body with him, while I naively believed in our idyll. Then came the second wave anger, hot, blind, all-crushing. It rose to my throat, tightened my temples. I wanted to smash everything around me, punch the walls, scream myself hoarse. I pictured her with him. Vivid, searing images flashed in my brain of their hands and lips. I groaned and grabbed my head, trying to claw those images out. I don't remember how I ended up in the garage. My hands reached for the toolbox on their own. I pulled out a heavy sledgehammer, feeling its rough, reliable handle. The old wooden workbench I built with my father when I was 16. It had stood here, a witness to our moves with Laura, our projects. Now it was just an object into which I needed to pour all this pain, all this rage. I raised the sledgehammer and brought it down on the tabletop with all my strength. The wood gave way with a crack, another blow, another. Splinters flew. I roared like a wounded animal, pouring out all the fury, all the hatred, all the humiliation. I hit until the workbench was a pile of wreckage, until I was sweaty and breathless, until my hands went numb from the impact. I dropped the sledgehammer and leaned against the wall, gulping air convulsively. My heart hammered somewhere in my throat. Physical exhaustion temporarily dulled the spiritual pain. It was the first primitive animal way to cope, to destroy something so as not to destroy myself. Returning to the house, I saw a dozen missed calls on my phone screen. From Laura, probably forgot something, or called to laugh, or to check if I'd offed myself. Her concern now seemed poisonous. I didn't call back. Instead, I dialed the only number that came to mind. "Mom?" I said, and my voice, to my horror, trembled and broke into a child's whisper. "Mom, can I come over?" Chapter 2. Sanctuary. The house of my childhood always smells the same, of apple pie, old wood, and the powder Mom uses to do the laundry. That smell was the antidote to the poison that had been coursing through me for the last few hours. Mom didn't ask questions. She opened the door, saw my face, and her eyes immediately filled with pain and understanding. She just hugged me, pressed me to her soft, familiar chest, and stroked my back, like in childhood when I came home with a scraped knee. "Come in, son, come in," she whispered. "I'll put the kettle on." I sat at the kitchen table clutching a large mug that read, "World's Best Dad, a gift from Emma for last Father's Day." Mom silently bustled around the kitchen, giving me time to collect myself. Buddy settled at my feet, sighing in his sleep. "Where's Emma?" I asked finally, horrified at the thought that my daughter might be with Laura and that man. "With Laura," Mom said quietly, sitting down opposite me. "She called, said we're having a crisis, that she needed to be alone with Emma. I didn't know what to tell you. You weren't picking up." Laura, she had already thought of everything, taken a defensive position, taken our daughter, to use her as a shield, to elicit pity, or simply because Emma was all she had left of her old life now. The thought of my child being near the person who destroyed our family brought a new wave of nausea. "She cheated on me, Mom," I exhaled, and the words again sounded unreal, like in a bad dream. "For 6 months. With some colleague. Left me for him." Mom closed her eyes for a moment. All the pain of the world was reflected on her face. "Oh, Jack, my poor boy. I'm so sorry." She didn't say, "I always knew she wasn't right for you," or "What did you expect? You were always leaving her for work." She just shared my pain. That was her strength. "What do I do?" I asked, and in that question was all my 40 years of experience turned to dust. I was a successful architect. I built skyscrapers. I could solve the most complex problems, and now I didn't know how to get through the next minute. "First, you just need to breathe," Mom said, placing her wrinkled hand on mine. "Drink tea. Go to sleep. Tomorrow will be a new day. You don't need to think about anything else right now." I stayed in my old room. Posters of rock bands had been replaced by diplomas and photos, but the spirit of youth still lingered there. I lay under an old blanket and stared at the ceiling. The anger had subsided, leaving behind a void so vast and black it felt like it would swallow me whole. I was falling into it, down a well. The worst thing isn't the pain itself. It's the realization that tomorrow it won't be over, or the day after, or in a month, that you're condemned to wake up with it every day, and you don't know how to live with this weight. I thought about Emma, my 7-year-old princess. How to tell her? How to explain that Mommy doesn't love Daddy anymore and found herself another uncle? How to protect her from this fallout? The thought of her tears was more unbearable than the thoughts of Laura's betrayal. I didn't sleep all night. The years spent together replayed in my head. Our first date, the proposal on the shore of Lake Michigan, her radiant face when she held newborn Emma. We made plans, dreamed of going to Japan on vacation next spring, buying a lake house to grow old in. It all now seemed like stage sets for a play that had ended, and I was left alone on stage, blinded by the spotlights, not knowing where to go. Towards morning, I finally fell into a short, troubled sleep. I dreamed I was running down a long, dark corridor and Laura was laughing ahead, but I couldn't catch her, and something big and dark was advancing from behind. I woke up with a heavy head and a feeling like a stone slab was lying on my chest. The first thing I realized was that it wasn't a nightmare. This was my new reality. Mom made me breakfast like a little kid, scrambled eggs with bacon and hot pancakes. I ate without appetite, but her care was the anchor that kept me from drifting completely into the open sea of despair. Then the doorbell rang. I flinched. Laura, already here for her things for the final talk? But Mike was at the door, my best friend since college. Tall, balding, with a bulldog's face and a heart the size of that sledgehammer lying in my garage. He came in, silently hugged me so hard my ribs cracked, and patted my back. "Jane's mom called," he grunted. Note, Jane's mom is used here, assuming Mike is referring to Jack's mom by her first name, a common informal way among friends. "Told me everything. I'm here. Shut up and listen. She's trash. He's garbage. You're great. Any questions?" I shook my head weakly. No words could have expressed greater understanding and support than Mike's simple, gruff tirade. "Great," he said. "Rule 1, no alcohol. No calls to her, no social media. Rule 2, you're coming with me right now." "Where?" I asked indifferently. "To the farm, damn it. Need to unload 2 tons of hay and paint the barn. Manual labor, brother. Best cure for a pain in the ass or the heart. Whatever." He wasn't waiting for objections. He just dragged me to his beat-up pickup truck. I looked back at Mom. She stood in the doorway, watching us with a slight smile. She knew Mike was the best thing that could happen to me right now. We drove down the highway and Mike didn't try to cheer me up or make conversation. He just turned on some classic rock and we listened in silence. He was giving me space, giving me the right to be silent and suffer, but not letting me be alone. His family farm north of Chicago was a place where time flowed differently. It smelled of manure, freshly cut grass, and freedom. His father, old Joe, as taciturn as his son, just nodded at me and handed me a pitchfork. That trailer over there, unloaded. I took off my jacket and climbed into the bed. The work was hellish. The hay was prickly, dusty, got everywhere under my clothes. After 15 minutes, I was covered in sweat, my back burning. After half an hour, the muscles in my arms and legs screamed from the strain. After an hour, I wasn't thinking about anything but the next forkful of hay. My brain, tortured by the endless loop of betrayal and pain, finally shut down. Only a primitive rhythm remained. Bend, scoop, carry, throw. We worked for several hours. Mike worked beside me, occasionally throwing assessing glances my way. When the trailer was empty, old Joe brought us 2 large glasses of ice-cold lemonade. "Not bad, kid," he rasped. "We'll fix the roof tomorrow." I drank the lemonade in one go, feeling the cold liquid spread through my exhausted body. I stood leaning against the fence, looking at the endless green fields where horses grazed. The sun warmed my face. The physical fatigue was pleasant, healing. It was real, tangible, unlike the ghostly pain in my soul. For the first time in the last 24 hours, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt just like a tired man, and in that was a tiny, microscopic step forward. On the way back at dusk, Mike finally spoke. "Listen, Jack, this is all shit. I know, but you gotta do 2 things. First, find a lawyer. Tomorrow. Second, you gotta fight for Emma with everything you've got. By any means necessary, the rest comes later." He was right. A lawyer, divorce, custody battle. It all lay ahead. Scary, complicated, disgusting, but necessary. Back at Mom's, I took a shower, washing off the sweat and dust, and collapsed into bed. This time, sleep found me almost instantly. I didn't dream of anything, just a black, bottomless void, but not as frightening, just silence. I slept for 10 hours straight, and when I woke up, the pain was still there, right where it was, like a faithful and hated dog. But something else was added to it, a faint sensation that I could breathe, not live yet, not be happy, not forgive, but just breathe. And for now, that was enough. My long journey was just beginning. A path from shards, back to something whole. And the first step, as Mike said, was to find a lawyer.